Previously on The Business.
To the business today. My name is Kriya Ganga. Welcome to the business, brought to you by FNB Business Banking. I'm joined by Astrid Askar, our brilliant mind behind everything business in studio. Welcome.
The pressure. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Kriya?
Good. Are you feeling a lot happier after yesterday's midterm budget?
I have to say no.
No,
No.
not at all.
Personally, not. No. Not that I expected much to come out of it, but even more disappointed after what I heard.
What disappointed you the most, though?
I think, I'm getting a little tired of hearing our ministers of finance get up and sprout forth the jargon. I mean, a lot of the stuff they say, National Development Plan is important for growth. It's important to grow the SME sector. Yes, we know. We all agreed on that.
Yeah.
There's consensus. That doesn't tell us anything. How are you going to do it, and what are the practical steps you're going to take to do it?
Give us a process.
Give us a process. Don't prove to us that you're aware of what the issues are, because we know you're aware of what the issues are.
We wouldn't have had you in Parliament or in government if we didn't know that.
Well,
you knew.
yeah, I heard an interesting discussion on the way in today about that, about whether the social grants are actually winning votes. Whether they're actually, influencing people to vote a certain way. But
Which is
let's
always
save
something
that for another day.
I think that's totally a different topic. This is, of course, an FMB show. It's a brilliant show. We take you down to the nitty-gritty kind of bits of business and make it easy to understand. And today's show is just that. We're going to be looking at the budget in detail today. And I put together a few very nice clips that I found. And, it's just little snippets that I found was very important from the budget speech. And one thing that I want to play...
You found some interesting stuff in there, Kriya.
I did. It's impressive,
You did. Okay.
One thing that I do want to play that I thought was very interesting was a little quote that Praveen Gordhan used in the budget speech, and that was from the president of Brazil. This is the clip.
I want to quote the former president of Brazil, a good friend of President Zuma, President Lula, who says, and I quote, "Poor countries must give an example of honesty, of ethics, so that we truly deserve the solidarity from millions and millions of people who would like to contribute, but sometimes are not sure their money will go where it should go," end of quote.
And I think that's very... it's very relevant to the situation in South Africa at the moment, because people want South Africa to become, a country that we can be proud and say we're proudly South African, especially when it comes to government and government spending. And even poor people would like to contribute, but it is come to a point where we are scared of where our money's going.
Well, yeah, there are two aspects to this, I think, Kriya. So the one is those of us who are taxpayers, we make an effort to pay our tax. If you're full-time employed, there's no way around that. You're going to be paying your tax. If you're running a business, then, there are certain things that you can claim against tax, and sometimes you tend to get a little bit more of a break. But there are other things in place that take away from that. So there's that side of it. You want to know that the tax money you're paying is being put into the kinds of things that make a difference to your daily life. Can you run your business properly? Are the roads that give people access to where your store is in good order? All the kinds of things we all complain about every day. Power goes down, we don't have water, those kinds of service delivery mechanisms that our tax money is supposed to go towards. Not to forget education, which I really would like to talk about as well. Then the other side of it, of course, is there is a whole segment of our population that has just not been brought into the formal economy. And until they get brought into the formal economy, they're going to remain below the tax-paying revenue base. So they may want to contribute. It's not a question of shying away from paying their tax, but they're just not getting into the kinds of jobs that allow them to earn the kind of income where they would start becoming taxpayers. And until we can resolve that situation, which again speaks to education, getting some kind of culture of entrepreneurship going, helping people to start their businesses, we're just never going to see the growth of that formal economy.
Okay. So it's pretty much it's everything that we've been promised time and time again that needs to now be implemented.
Well, there's one thing that did put a bit of a smile on my face, okay, which speaks to the quote you used, and that is really about knowing where the money is going. And one of the things that Praveen Gordhan did say yesterday, he used the word abuse. and he did address government spending because our
Yes.
public spending bill has been going up. And so he's put a couple of things in place that, we're flying around the Twitter sphere, Twitter universe.
Yes, and that's
yesterday.
exactly what we're going to play in just now, yeah.
Okay, well, should we play one of those?
Well, it's actually quite a long clip.
Yeah, he addressed 4 or 5 different things. Let's see what you've got there.
Yes, we've got the whole thing. So
Okay.
it's very interesting. If you didn't hear the budget speech that happened yesterday at 2 o'clock, he, like Astrid said, he addressed government spending and he addressed it in terms of partying, cars,
travel.
houses, travel. And this is actually what he had to say.
The Cabinet has decided of its own accord that there will be these following standards that will be put into place for cars. So cost limits will be set, bulk purchasing will be used to reduce costs, security features will be considered, and there will be no compensation for the use of personal cars. As far as overseas delegations are concerned, business class only for ministers, assistants to ministers will be limited to 2, direct routes will be used, the number of officials to be kept to a minimum by each of the delegations that are going. In respect of housing, ministers awaiting allocation of houses will be accommodated in rented apartments and not hotels any longer. New refurbishment guidelines for limiting costs will be developed. As of now, and as soon as we can get the message out from the presidency, no credit cards will be issued or exist once these notices are received by all executive members around the country. They're to be scrapped. Our approach to reducing costs and eliminating wasteful expenditure will focus on 6 areas over the period ahead, honourable members. The largest is consultancy services. There are, of course, necessary engineering and advisory services employed by government departments. However, we need A, better contract management, B, stricter control of consultancy fees, C, each government entity is to develop a consultancy reduction plan over the course of this financial year. The second aspect is amongst officials as well, no credit cards to be issued and the existing ones to be cancelled. On travel and related costs, the hiring of cars is to be restricted to B class, except for special instances such as rural travel. The number of officials travelling to Cape Town offices will be limited. And the leader of government business, Deputy President Motlanthe, has been asked to engage with Parliament on measures to reduce costs, such as the size of delegations appearing before parliamentary committees and the cost implications of the current Pretoria-Cape Town arrangement, the 2 capitals. Business class for overseas travel is restricted to DGs and DDGs only, and locally business class for DGs only. As far as advertising is concerned, guidelines to limit non-essential costs and for better use of GCIS facilities will be developed. Catering and event costs or event management costs, guidelines will be developed for reducing events costs, including better use of government facilities rather than outside venues of meetings. I think this one will particularly interest the members on my left. No public funds to be used for the purchase of alcohol. Entertainment allowance for officials to be restricted to 2,000 rands. And following the review of accommodation leases as office accommodation initiated by Minister Ngesi, steps are underway to reduce long-term office accommodation and government housing costs and make further savings from electricity demand management measures in government buildings. So these are measures that Cabinet has decided upon and which will be implemented both amongst political office bearers and officials employed in government entities or state-owned entities.
It really sounded like it was an awards ceremony. Like everyone was so excited about all of these changes.
And you know, when he said to the members on my left, he was talking about the DA, because of course that's a big issue.
Yeah.
That's something that they've been challenging the government on. So yeah, there we have it, a whole set of reduced spending. And having said that, this minister has been pretty good at making sure that public spending comes in on limit, you know, those kinds of things that he's talking about. But I think he's sending a very clear signal, particularly to attract the attention of the international investor community, that they do want to address any abuse of power and any overspending, because we all know there have been instances of that. And the second thing is to, apart from the international investor community, one has to be mindful of the fact that the ratings agencies were listening very carefully to this mini-budget speech yesterday. And those are the guys that the international investors and local investors do look to for some kind of guidance about whether they feel overall positive or overall negative, or perhaps a little indifferent about South Africa's growth and its ability to meet its debt. And, you know, from what I've heard so far since the end of the speech yesterday, it looks like he's bought South Africa time and we're out of the woods and we're not looking at some kind of a downgrade, but there's no official statement on that yet. Unless something's happened since we started the show.
No. So if you want to give us just a brief summary of how's this good and how's this bad for us going forward till we have the major budget speech that'll happen in Feb.
Okay, so I think, Kriya, the reason why some people are saying, well, we didn't really get much out of it, or they're feeling the way I did, is because there's some things that we would have liked him to address. I think we were probably quite over-optimistic if we thought he was going to address these things, because they never really get addressed in the mini-budget. They get addressed in the main budget in February. But things that work for us and things that don't work for us, if I have to categorize them, what would look better, we have to grow the economy. You know, essentially two main categories that need to be addressed. One, create more jobs. We can't create more jobs until we make it easier for people to run their own businesses. Perhaps take a look at those labor practices that are preventing people from wanting to hire people because it's becoming quite onerous. And, you know, a lot of admin built into that, and a lot of admin built into running a business, running your own business. So we need to address that so that people start hiring more and more people can become contributors to that tax base. The second thing is, if that happens, then we grow our economy as a whole. When you're sitting in a situation where your imports are exceeding your exports, that is why your economy is not growing. You need more South African businesses to be selling product overseas when the rand is weak, so that we can bring that foreign currency into the country. And that's a big issue that, you know, nothing that he said yesterday really addressed that. So he did a slight revision of what our estimates are and our gross domestic product, which has come down slightly. So, you know, and we can talk to some economists about that, and we will over the unfolding weeks. We've had comments like the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry saying what they would have liked to have heard more about is things like the tax regime. But he doesn't traditionally address that anyway in the mini-budget.
Yeah.
So, you know, they might have liked to have heard him talking more about the tax rates for corporates, reducing the onerous administrative burden for small companies and enterprises that have tons of paperwork to fill in. Our sponsors have come up with a solution for that, actually, but, you know, people can go and find out about that themselves. But they are addressing those kinds of things for small businesses. What does work for us? I think investor confidence is okay. It's intact. He's shown that he's put limits in place. He's going to try reduce the spending, and he's got a plan for South Africa to pay off its debt. Will that be sustainable in the longer term? I don't think so, but certainly for the foreseeable future in the next year, South Africa's okay as far as its debt burden is concerned. So we're not sitting in a situation like this. I could see. Took the words out of your mouth. What else works for us? Absolutely. We like to see that the government is doing something proactive about cutting back on spending if we believe that there's been overspending. And there are measures to support some kind of public infrastructure growth. So there's a commitment of money to electricity and transport capacity. Those are good things. Promoting industrial competitiveness. He spoke about industrial hubs and industrial development type of hubs. So, that's a good sign. But again, that's what I was talking about earlier. We all know this and we've heard it before.
Yeah.
Instead of just acknowledging that that's what we need to do, we'd like to see some tangible things that touch our day-to-day lives. And then, broader cooperation, emphasis on education. He spoke about monetary allocation to education. And I think it's about 150 that has been set aside, 150 million that's been set aside for broadband rollout across schools.
Yes.
Again, one needs to look at that in the context of the broader picture and access to devices. All very well to have broadband access, but can you afford the computer or the phone?
Exactly. Rather spend that money to get the children into schools and have good teachers that will then, educate the children, then put something in place that they're probably not going to use immediately. But great. That was our little, kind of insight into the budget. We are going to keep unfolding it as the weeks come, because this is not going to be the end of it. This is literally just the start. So yes, this is of course the Business Show. It is brought to you by FNB Business.
The Business. Weekdays 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. On bulls.co.za. Brought to you by FNB Business Banking.